paradrama tales.
My fiancée reconnected with her ex during a break and ghosted me for weeks, then returned, expecting our summer wedding to go on as if nothing happened. I drove 3 hours, adrenaline and dread churning, as I knocked on her parents' door and found a truth I wasn't ready for. For 3 years, Lily and I built our love story from the ground-up late-night study sessions and college cross-country road trips in my beat-up SUV and quiet Sundays curled up on the couch dreaming aloud about one day. When I slipped that sapphire-tipped ring onto her finger last summer, it felt less like a proposal and more like the natural next chapter of a story we'd already been living. We leapt into wedding planning, with the same excitement that had carried us through every challenge, selecting a soft lavender palette that reminded us of our first spring hike together, touring sunlit venues where I could picture us saying, "I do," and scribbling guest lists that included grandparents and old friends who'd watched our love unfold. Every detail from a bespoke cake flavor that blended our favorite berries to an acoustic guitarist who would play our song felt like an affirmation that forever was already ours to claim. Our daily lives mirrored that certainty. Each morning, I'd wake to her text, "Morning sunshine," and each night she'd call me after her evening shift to share something as small as a funny meme or as big as a work promotion. Friday nights were reserved for date nights, where we rotated between hole-in-the-wall diners and that Italian trattoria she adored. Family dinners meant her parents grilling me on first-look ideas while my folks teased me about finally settling down. In every conversation, the word we seemed anchored in steel. We planned decor, discussed future home renovations, and even tossed around baby names for the little ones we were sure would come. Yet, amid that whirlwind of joy, I never paused to wonder whether our foundation was as solid as I believed. I'd watched her laugh when I butchered her favorite recipe and held her hand through stressful job interviews. I trusted her when she reassured me that her hometown trip was just a break for family time, not a break in us. In choosing our wedding date just 12 weeks away, I convinced myself that mutual respect and shared dreams were the only blueprints required for a lifetime together. But beneath the surface of our engagement, bliss lay assumptions I'd never questioned, that loyalty was automatic, that open communication would never falter, and that our history would always eclipse any momentary doubt. I took comfort in the rose-tinted photos we posted online, their perfect smiles masking the fact that no relationship, however deep, is immune to interruption. Looking back, the innocence of that presumption is almost heartbreaking, because it blinded me to the subtle cracks that would soon widen into a chasm. In that frame of mind, I believed our future was unshakable, and I was utterly unaware of the storm gathering just beyond our horizon. The morning Lily boarded her flight home felt ordinary. She kissed me goodbye, suitcase in hand, suitcase that would be back in a couple of weeks, she promised. And for the first 24 hours, everything seemed normal. Our daily texts fluttered through my phone. She called that first night to let me know she'd arrived safely, and I pictured her laughing with her sister over shared childhood memories. But on day 2, her voice was different, heavier, hesitant. Over a crackling line, I heard her say, "I think I need some time to think," and then she offered no more explanation. Think about what I asked, but she only replied, "I feel like I need space." I didn't want to push too hard. The words hung between us, awkward and incomplete, like a door left ajar in a silent house. That afternoon, I stared at my phone for hours, refreshing our chat thread until the screen glowed blank, no reply. The next day, the little delivered checkmark ceased entirely. No good morning texts, no heart emojis at sunrise, no casual hope you're having a good day message. Even her Instagram, once alive with morning coffee photos and sunset snaps, went dark. I called straight to voicemail. I texted unopened. Panic prickled at my neck as I realized that asking for space had become a quiet exile. I tried her sister next, only to receive a curt, "Haven't seen her, much sorry," a shrug in text form that offered no comfort. In those opening days of her silence, my mind raced through every recent conversation. Had I said something wrong, planning the lavender table settings? Was I insensitive, asking about her mother's health? But none of the events added up to a sudden need for weeks of radio silence. The wedding checklist sat unfinished on my desk, cake tastings, seating charts, tux fittings, while I lurked in the margins of my life, replaying Lily's 4-word request for time to think. Each unanswered call felt like a verdict rendered without trial. Sleep abandoned me. I traced the route she'd flown, imagining her walking silent suburban streets. Her phone darkened as I lay awake in our empty bedroom. My friends offered theories, pre-wedding jitters, family drama, maybe a surprise health scare, but none matched the gut punch of being abandoned without warning. I fought the urge to drive out there immediately, knowing distance couldn't cure the ache of uncertainty. Instead, I tried distraction, extra hours at work, endless coffee with buddies rewatching movies that once made me laugh. Nothing worked. By the end of week 1, I realized that space had morphed into silence, and silence into something darker, doubt. I wondered if she was still in her sister's apartment, or with someone else entirely. The break she'd asked for wasn't just a pause in our wedding plans. It was a shutter closing on our relationship. And as the days stretched into a second week of ghosting, I understood that the real test of love isn't in perfect days, but in how we handle the ones when communication goes dark. After Lily asked for space, our world went dark and stayed that way for weeks. I watched our shared message thread morph from buzzing to barren, the familiar green bubbles, replaced by a void that yanked at my chest. Ghosting isn't just disappearing, it hijacks your brain's alarm system, triggering fight or flight responses and flooding you with cortisol, the stress hormone that makes your heart pound like a hummingbird's wings. Research shows nearly 90% of people who've been ghosted report heightened anxiety and sleep disturbances, and I was living proof of those stats, counting every minute between unanswered texts. Each morning began the same. I'd wake to the phantom weight of my phone fingers itching to refresh our conversation, only to find the screen unchanged. No good morning emoji, no how's your coffee quip. Even social media, the one place she used to share sunrise photos and family reunions, fell silent, her account frozen in time. I called her voicemail so often it filled up each blocked greeting, a reminder of how thoroughly she'd disappeared. I texted questions, "Are you okay? Can we talk?" and waited with bated breath as the little delivered check marks hovered indefinitely. By day 5, my friends noticed I'd stopped laughing. They offered theories, pre-wedding stress, family drama, even a surprise surgery, but none hit the mark. Their well-meaning reassurances were like drips of water on a droughted heart, necessary but insufficient. I tried busying myself, extra shifts at the hospital, weekend hiking trips, even learning to cook Gordon Ramsay's scrambled eggs, but every distraction unraveled the moment my phone failed to ring. Nighttime was the worst. Insomnia gripped me, transforming my bedroom into a replay loop of our last happy memories. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the warmth of her hand in mine during Sunday brunch, the shared grin when our wedding cake sample tasted shockingly good. I lay awake for hours, the digital silence echoing louder than any argument. According to psychologists, silence in love can feel like social rejection, activating the same neural pathways as physical pain, and I understood the pain, intimately feeling it flare behind my eyes. I even reached out to her sister, hoping for a lifeline. A brief text, "Haven't seen her, sorry," landed like a door slamming shut. No details, no concern, just a shrug in digital form. It felt like everyone around me had conspired to erase her existence from my life. Each passing day deepened the shadows of doubt. Was she really home with family? Or was there someone else asking for space? Someone she prioritized over the vows we'd drafted together? By the end of week 2, the ghosting had done more than halt our wedding plans. It fractured my sense of reality. I no longer recognized the man staring back at me in the mirror, eyes rimmed, red shoulders hunched under invisible burdens. Love, I'd learned, can go dark without warning, leaving you to navigate its absence alone. And as that silence stretched on, I understood the next choice would define whether that darkness consumed me or whether I'd fight my way back into the light. I pulled onto the highway just after dawn, the gas gauge hovering on E as if it too were warning me against this trip. I'd packed an overnight bag in case the confrontation stretched into an eviction, skipped breakfast, and fueled up at the same 24-hour station where Lily and I used to stop for late-night snacks. In the passenger seat sat my phone, charged and locked, my only lifeline to a world that had gone silent. With every mile marker I passed, adrenaline and dread intertwined in my chest, the hum of the tires on asphalt echoing the questions spinning through my mind. Would she even open the door? Would I recognize the woman who'd planned our wedding? 3 hours later, I turned off the two-lane road into a quiet subdivision of clapboard houses and manicured lawns. Lily's parents' home sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, its picket fence freshly painted an ironic backdrop for the storm I was about to unleash. I parked and stared at the front door, recalling the first time I rang their bell to ask for her hand in marriage. Now, that same door would reveal either my salvation or my worst nightmare. When my fist finally met the wood, my heart slammed against my ribs. The seconds stretched, then the knob twisted, and there she was, lily hair pinned back, eyes wide in disbelief. For a heartbeat, we simply stared, two people who had once filled every corner of each other's world, now separated by the thinnest veneer of awkward space. Her parents watched from behind her, their faces masks of confusion and dread. She stepped aside wordlessly, and I walked past her into their living room, the scent of her mother's pot roast, mingling with tension so thick I could taste it. She offered coffee as though she were welcoming a business partner instead of the man she'd ghosted. I nodded once, my throat too tight for words, and sat on the edge of a floral couch that felt miles from home. She poured, hands shaking, and handed me a mug. "How was your drive?" she asked, voice trembling on polite autopilot. I took a slow sip, feeling its warmth slide down like liquid courage. "Let's skip to the part where you explain why I'm standing here," I said. She froze the cup halfway to her lips, and the room fell into a hush so absolute it swallowed the ticking clock. And then I saw it, the flicker of guilt in her eyes, the uneven set of her shoulders. It was the moment I knew there would be no smooth salve for this wound. Distance hadn't kept her honest, but it had kept me determined. The break had become a barrier in her mind, not in mine. I set the mug down, bracing for the truth that would either fracture us forever, or I dared to hope finally set us free. When she finally looked up from that trembling coffee cup, I braced myself for a simple apology, anything to pierce the fog of silence. Instead, she took a shuddering breath and said, "I ran into my ex when I got here." Those 4 words landed like a punch. I watched her eyes dart away as she continued. "It wasn't planned, we just started talking." Talking, she repeated as if the word could soften the blow. But emotional infidelity isn't measured by hands held or bodies pressed together. It's the secret conversations that carve a canyon between two people. Psychologists note that when we share intimate thoughts with someone outside our primary relationship, we activate the same neural pathways as physical betrayal. In that moment, talking felt like a betrayal etched deep into my trust. I leaned forward, voice steady, though my heart thundered. "Talking? You mean you ghosted me for weeks because you needed to see if you still had feelings for him?" Her lips parted, pain flickering across her face, but the words had already ripped through everything I believed. She tried to explain, "I didn't want to hurt you until I knew I needed clarity." Clarity. A word so clinical it made my blood run cold. I could feel the room spinning as I traced back through the 3 years we'd spent planning our dreams. Emotional affairs don't always require secret rendezvous. Sometimes they begin with a shared laugh, a confidant's shoulder, a heart laid bare to someone else. And there she'd been trading inside jokes with him, leaning into his empathy, while I lay awake desperate for a single text. I counted the timeline in my head, a week of silence, then this confession delivered with the same hesitation she'd once reserved for our wedding vows. "So, all those mornings, you didn't call? I said you were testing a connection with him." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I thought if I still loved you, I'd come back. If not, I'd end it cleanly. But love isn't a test. It's a promise renewed every day through honesty and respect." And in her quest for certainty, she had trampled the very foundation of our commitment. I swallowed hard, taste bitter. "You treated me like an option on hold," I replied. "While you figured out your feelings, I was planning our life." Her sob caught in her throat as reality settled between us. The betrayal wasn't just in her actions. It was in her belief that she could pause our lives without consequence. I stood, voice gentle but firm. Talking became betrayal the moment you chose his feelings over mine and our engagement. She reached out, but I stepped back. Distance hadn't kept us safe from this pain. Only truth could. And in that hush, I realized there was no unringing this bell. Whether I walked away or stayed, the person I loved had changed, and so had I. The room felt impossibly small in that moment, the air thick with everything unsaid between us. I stood by the coffee table, each heartbeat echoing the betrayal I'd just endured, and watched Lily's shoulders slump as her tears fell silently. I realized then that words alone wouldn't mend this fracture. Only action could show how deeply the breach ran. So, I drew in a steadying breath and laid down my terms. "I need to know you see what you've done." I said, my voice low but unwavering. "Not just the pain you caused, but the vows we made. If you still believe in us, you have to prove it right now." I held her gaze until I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. She'd asked for clarity by reconnecting with her ex, yet here she was, confronted with the cost of her search for certainty. Slowly, I unfastened my engagement ring, our symbol of commitment, the promise of forever we'd celebrated under summer sunshine, and placed it on the worn oak table between us. The ring caught the overhead light, its facets glinting like shattered dreams. My hands trembled only slightly. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind, but the weight of the tangible jewel on the table felt heavier than I'd imagined. "This was your choice too." I continued nodding toward the ring. "You agreed to this life with me. You promised loyalty, respect, and honesty." I paused, letting each word sink in. "You ghosted me for weeks to test a connection with someone else. And now you expect me to pick up where we left off." She swallowed, searching for an answer that wouldn't come. Instead, her silence spoke volumes. That's when I knew an empty apology couldn't bridge the gulf between "I'm sorry" and "I'm changed." I needed a concrete sign that she understood the gravity of her actions. "Here's your choice," I said, on my tone gentle but resolute. "If you want these vows back, you need to earn them. No more secrets, no more pauses. You'll move out of your parents' house and into a new place that we share. We'll start counseling together. You'll block your ex's number and show me proof you've cut contact. And you'll wear this ring only after you've done every one of those things. And I'm convinced your heart is truly here." Her lips trembled as she looked from me to the ring, and I saw the moment of reckoning in her eyes. She reached a tentative hand toward the table, but I held up a hand. "Not yet," I said softly. "Actions first. Words are just wind." As I turned and walked toward the door, I left the ring behind like a gauntlet thrown. It wasn't an end, but a boundary, my ultimatum, my self-respect etched in metal. And in that fracture, I discovered my own strength. Sometimes love demands a test of vows more powerful than any ceremony could provide. Weeks after I'd thrown down my ultimatum, Lily's shape appeared on my doorstep again, this time at midnight, her fist hammering like a judge's gavel. I hadn't invited her, and deep down, I knew this was another test, her way of probing whether I'd really meant it when I said I was done. Research shows that repeated unwanted contact can activate the same stress pathways as physical threats, hijacking your sense of safety. 10% fact presenter. Yet there she stood, drenched in streetlight and regret, murmuring, "I just needed to see you," as though nostalgia excused her intrusion. I didn't open the door. I pressed my palm against the cool wood and said through the frame, "This isn't a negotiation, Lily. You need to stop coming here." My words were firm. Boundaries aren't walls to keep out love. They're guardrails that protect the heart. 30% frameworker. She backed away, disappointment flickering in her eyes, and I heard her car peel out of the driveway. A few days later, I spotted her car in the grocery store parking lot, engines oiling like silent accusations. I ducked into another aisle, but later faced her in the checkout line, silent, staring, waiting for a reaction. When she mouthed, "Please stop," I nodded curtly and walked off. That moment crystallized a truth I'd learned. Respect for boundaries is the first sign of genuine remorse. She tried again with a text, "Can we talk?" "I'm sorry." It pinged on my phone like a wounded plea. I ignored it, letting the notification fade. Cognitive behavioral studies note that ignoring unwanted messages reinforces boundary clarity for both parties, reducing anxiety over time. Then there was Mia's dinner invitation, which Lily discovered through the grapevine, and suddenly she was pounding on my door, again accusing me of betrayal for even talking to another woman. Her anger felt like a mirror of my own past, hurt proof that unresolved emotions can spill over and marshal new conflicts. I looked at her calm but resolute and said, "I'm allowed to have friends who respect me. You chose to disappear. Now you must respect my decision." With each return visit, Lily's persistence only strengthened my resolve. I realized that setting limits wasn't cruelty. It was a declaration of self-worth. 25% opinionator. By refusing to engage in the same drama, I reclaimed my peace. Over time, her car stopped appearing around my neighborhood. The door stayed locked. The echoes of her footsteps faded into memory. Through those lingering echoes, I learned that love isn't proven by endurance of chaos, but by honoring one another's safe space. True respect arises when someone you've hurt chooses to stay away until invited back, and maybe then only under new terms. And in that understanding, I found the final measure of healing. I realized I couldn't navigate this alone, so I reached out to Mia, Lily's friend, who checked on me early on, and found in her a surprising lifeline. Research shows that strong social support can reduce post-breakup distress by up to 60%, 10% fact. Presenter, and every time Mia answered my late-night ramblings or met me for coffee, I felt that number tick down just a bit. We established a simple framework. 30% frameworker to rebuild my confidence first. I'd share whatever was on my mind without fear of judgment. Second, Mia would challenge any self-doubt with reminders of my worth. And third, I'd practice saying no when something felt off. No more ghost chasing, no more second guessing. Our friendship blossomed over shared stories and quiet moments. She listened without pity as I recounted Lily's midnight visits, and I laughed for the first time when she playfully debated whether my favorite bar's happy hour was still worth it. In those hours, I learned the healing power of being seen just as I was, not as the jilted fiancé in everyone else's story. Yet, story isn't enough without structure. I set clear boundaries, 35%. Storyteller, no more late-night calls to Lily. No obsessive social media scrolling, and no dinner plans with anyone who didn't respect my clothes for repairs sign. Mia helped me test those limits when Lily's text popped up. Can we talk? I turned off my phone and spent the evening sipping herbal tea with Mia, instead, reminding myself that sometimes self-care means ignoring the siren call of unresolved drama. I learned to gift myself small victories, a yoga class on Tuesday evenings, a solo road trip to the lake on Saturday and Sunday, brunches that never ended with my heart in my throat. Opinionation, 25%. Opinionator came when I decided that true respect isn't given by default, but earned through consistent action. I told Mia I deserve friends who show up without drama and partners who value my peace. And she nodded. You've earned that peace, don't let anyone bargain for it back. That conviction fueled me to gently but firmly decline a work lunch request from Lily's coworker, and to block any number that felt like a backward step into chaos. By weaving support and self-enforced limits into my daily routine, I discovered a new sense of agency. No longer was I the man waiting at Lily's door. I was the man who chose safe spaces, laughed again, and defined my worth on my own terms. In building this network of care and boundaries, I found not just recovery, but a roadmap forward, proof that when one chapter ends, the next can begin with stronger pages. In choosing my own peace over someone else's uncertainty, I discovered that the truest form of love begins with how we treat ourselves, by honoring our boundaries, reclaiming our time, and surrounding ourselves with people who uplift rather than unsettle us. Now, when I wake to the quiet hum of morning light in my apartment, I feel a calm I haven't known in months. My heart still carries the echoes of what we lost, but those echoes remind me not of betrayal, but of the strength it took to walk away. I've learned that healing isn't a finish line, but a journey marked by small victories, saying no without guilt, finding joy in solo coffee rituals, and laughing freely with friends who value my story. If you've ever faced the pain of being someone's backup plan or felt abandoned in the name of clarity, know that you're not alone and that choosing yourself first can be the most courageous yes you ever give. Share your experience in the comments below to remind others they deserve respect and honesty. If this journey resonated, subscribe to join our community of resilience. Hit the bell so you won't miss our next episode on rebuilding trust after heartbreak. And remember, your worth isn't defined by someone else's choices. It's proven every time you stand up for yourself.